So I'll just kickstart this discussion, and Bharat, maybe you can start us, because as I understand you are much closer to this bill than many of us here. What do you see are the two key positives or two key concern areas? If we can start and kickstart on that.
Thank you, Amrish. Very good afternoon to all of you. Amrish, if I look at this bill objectively, I may get a bit emotional because I've been associated with the drafting stage from Irani committee in 2005 and the series of transformations it went through in 2009, 2011 and finally what we see in 2012. There has been a very serious attempt to kind of provide a better enabling architecture for corporate governance. So they have made a very serious attempt. I don't know how far they will succeed, but they believe that by the new provisions relating to independent directors, auditors, audit committees, mandatory rotation, related party transactions, whistleblower, and host of other measures. They believe, I believe at least an enabling architecture has been created. Now, how in India, India the biggest challenge comes in enforcement. So how it will eventually play out is we have to watch and see. And the second major thing which I would say is a positive of this bill is the fact that it has certainly tried to bring back corporate democracy in the sense that in the 56 Act you have for a large number of issues you needed central government approval, whether it's loans to directors, contracts with related parties. Many matters required government approval and you need to go back to Sastri Bhavan. They've pruned down that list very significantly. In fact, the 2009 bill came at a zero approval process, not even for directors' remuneration, but then certain aberrations happened. Some CEOs became greedy and started drawing 70 crores of remuneration. So the directors' remuneration part, they've brought back. But by and large, if you see, most of the things now can be approved by shareholders vis-a-vis what required earlier the approval of directors. So these are the two strong positives of the bill. And as far as the negatives are concerned, I think there are quite a few, and it will be really a difficult choice, like it is choosing which is the best song of Lata Mangeshkar. So which is the negatives, but if I look at it very objectively, I think the biggest negative is I find that this bill is more reactive than a proactive, in the sense that it is reacted to recent corporate scams and scandals more than thinking and providing us a law for the next 50 years. See, this company law was getting reformed after 56 years. It was passed in 56. It came into force on 1st of April 1956. This law in 2013 is more than 56 years, and I was expecting a very futuristic law. If you ask me, I am a little disappointed. It is not a very reformist legislation. It's more a reactive. If Ketan Parekh's came, they amended section 372A. The new incarnation under 186 is terrible. Second, they are, same way with auditors, they saw Satyam fiasco and they felt that they need to tighten the screws there, and a very, very extreme shift from pendulum from one extreme to the other. And the second major thing is this entire gamut of provisions relating to intercorporate loans and investments and guarantees. We as practicing managers will find it extremely difficult on a day-to-day basis to implement the new provision, because I think they have not thought through the practical realities of the commercial world. The parent company is required to give guarantees on behalf of subsidiaries in the infancy stage, and you can't say that every guarantee beyond 60% you go back to shareholders, get its approval. Let me tell you, there are several provisions, because of want of time I won't go narrate them here. Will be required to approach shareholders far too frequently than hitherto. So you will have your Birla Matusri and Patkar Hall never available for booking because it's always booked for some shareholders meeting. And that's the concern I have. It would involve additional cost, but these two major concerns, that the bill is more a reaction. It doesn't provide for LBO structure. It is not provided for any kind of new capital instruments. It is not provided for treasury stock. Nothing, no reform at all. It's more a reaction. I would have preferred a more reformist legislation than a more reactive legislation.
Thank you, Bharat, for your very candid observations. Can I shift to Mr. Gupta, and if you could lay out, what you see are the two positives from your perspective or two concern areas. From a financial perspective, I think, Pramod, that would be more helpful for the group here.
Thanks, Amrish. I'm one of the odd man out over here. In the legal gathering, I'm a finance person. But I guess one of the reasons why, many of not only me, but many of my finance colleagues are interested in this new bill is that it does impact our life very, very significantly on a day-to-day basis. And that is where, going back to Mr. Vasani's point, if we look at the whole auditor's gamut, that impacts our life very significantly. Anything that has to do with related party transactions, ICDs, etc., that has a very significant impact on the finance team. Then again, M&A has got a very significant impact on the finance teams, and so on and so forth. So coming back to the two positives, I think I will in a way echo what Mr. Vasani had said about the shareholder democracy and good intentions. One of the things that also probably got covered a little bit more in Ambarish's presentation was around M&A framework. I think this bill does go at least some steps towards having a more modern M&A framework. So that should help the corporate sector. I won't say it is as reformist as, let's say, what happened in US in 60s and 70s, which completely changed the M&A framework. But when we look at it in consonance with what is going on in FDIs, what is going on in, let's say, takeover code, etc., I think this will provide a little more modern framework to the country. And the shareholders' democracy is anyway there. Coming back to negatives, I think one of the biggest thing that we find is that especially from the MNC point of view, most of the MNCs have got private limited companies over here, and the framework which is a lot more applicable to the listed entities is getting extended to the MNCs, and that makes it a lot more onerous for many of the organizations which are not even familiar with a lot of the requirements that are there. The second thing is that most of the MNCs, because of the socialist tendencies in 70s, had to go for a listing. And now we have, when we look at the company's law in consonance with the listing requirements and delisting requirements, it has become almost like a spider's web where you can get in but you can never get out. And on one hand, you are not able to get out, and on the other hand, the requirements for compliances are becoming more and more onerous. And that gives a very, very difficult, let's say, regulatory framework for listed MNCs to operate in the country. I think these are the two big negatives I would look at.
Thank you, Pramod. Mr. Makhija, from your perspective, from a strategic point of view, as you sit on some of those boards, how do you see those companies bill shaping up from a strategic perspective? So are there some good points? Are there some areas of concern as you see them?
Actually, if you see from already professionally organized companies, there is not much of change except that there are some problems. In positive, we follow CSR. Now there is of course some guideline whether we should spend 2%. We follow the whistleblowing policy. We follow the proper board structure in terms of audit committee, in terms of remuneration committee, in terms of grievance committee. Now the name may be different. So we are happy that most other companies will have to look at this in a more serious manner. So we will be having kind of a level playing field with lots of companies who may have not been so conscious about it. So actually, if you look at the morning session, 3 speakers spoke, which is good, which is merger and acquisition, CSR, and whistleblowing policy and fraud, etc. So the 3 speakers actually were talking the positive of this, fortunately. Although I also agree with the other panelists that when you get into too many details, it's good to have a shareholder democracy. But I think this bill so far, I hope it will change. Bharat and others are working, hopefully. The rules will be different. But actually unnecessarily, because of the background of some scam, it unnecessarily is trying to get into too many details. the framework is good, but getting into too many details is unnecessarily binding people and assuming that you are corrupt or you are wrong, you are likely to do things wrong, and therefore I need to be observing you at each step. If that philosophy is changed, I think then it will become a good act after the bill, and probably it will become futuristic. Hopefully it will become futuristic, because we also assume that it will not take another 56 years to relook at this, but even then it will take another at least a decade before somebody else works on it, because even after 56 years we have seen that it was actually presented to the Parliament 2 years back. So it takes long time to get such bill re-enacted. So therefore one hopes that finally by the time it becomes an act and by the time the rules are framed, it will become more amenable, more practical.